Hello, and welcome to Vidhammer, the battle report resource for Warhammer Fantasy. In this video, we'll be covering the semifinal match of the Anthem Games tournament, held in Tampa in November of 2011. This is a 2,500-point battle line matchup between the Skaven and the Ogre Kingdoms using the 8th edition rules. The terrain pieces consist of the 2 hills and 2 forests in opposing corners, and a marsh in the center of the table. All forest types are unknown until a unit enters it. The Skaven win the roll for placement and elect to have the Ogres set up first. They start by placing a single saber tusk on the right side of their battle line. The Skaven place their war machines consisting of 2 warp lightning cannons on the right and left rear corners of their play area, and a plague claw catapult near the center. The Ogres place another saber tusk towards the left side of their battle line, and the Skaven place a unit of 80 slaves in horde formation across from the lower saber tusk unit just at the lower right edge of the screen. The Ogres place a unit of 3 lead belchers in the lower left forest, which turns out to be a blood forest. The Skaven place 20 clan rats with an attached poison wind mortar team to the right of the slaves. 9 Ogre bulls are placed in the center of the Ogre battle line, and another unit of 20 clan rats comes down next to the first, with an attached warp-fire thrower team. The Ogres place 7 Iron Guts next to the bulls, and the Skaven put down a second horde formation of 75 slaves. The single Ogre riding the styrofoam block is an Iron Blaster, which takes up position at the top of the screen behind the hill. The Skaven place a unit of 39 Plague Monks to the right of the second slave unit. The next placements are off-camera and consist of 3 Mournfang Cavalry, which are placed a few inches behind the rightmost saber tusk, and 41 Storm Vermin for the Skaven, placed just behind the hill in the lower right of the screen. The final Ogre placement is a Thunder Tusk, whose part is played by the beloved character Manfred, but due to lucky Skaven artillery fire, he never makes a screen appearance. The Skaven wedge 5 Poisoned Wind Globadiers with a Poisoned Wind Mortar weapon team in between the Plague Monk and Slave units. The Ogres have 3 characters in their army, a Firebelly and a BSB that go with the Ogre Bulls, and their Slaughtermaster General that sits with the Iron Guts. The final Skaven unit is a Doom Wheel placed across from the Iron Blaster at the upper edge of the screen. The Skaven characters consist of a Grey Seer General that sits in the off-screen Clan Rat unit, a BSB that goes with the centermost Clan Rats, a Plague Priest that goes with the Plague Monks, and a Warlock Engineer that ends up in the lower Slave unit. After regular placement, the Ogres place a scouting unit of 3 Man-Eaters near the Doom Wheel at the top of the screen. In spell generation, the Plague Priest gets Pestilent Breath and Vermintide, the Warlock Engineer takes Warp Lightning and Death Frenzy, and the Grey Seer ends up with Skitter Leap, Howling Warp Gale, Plague, and Wither. For the Ogres, the Firebelly gets Flamestorm, while the Slaughtermaster takes Spine Marrow, Bull Gorger, Toothcracker, and Troll Guts. The Skaven win the first turn roll and aim the Doom Wheel towards the Scouts. The Skaven battle line moves forward, with the slave units switching to a 5-wide formation. For the first Winds of Fate, the Skaven roll Snake Eyes, but they get 1 pity die from the Warp Energy Condenser. They kill off the lower saber tusk with Warp Lightning from the Engineer as their only spell. In the shooting phase, the Doom Wheel hits the Man-Eaters for 2 wounds. 1 Poison Wind Mortar deals another wound to the Man-Eaters, while the other drifts suspiciously, but doesn't find a target. The Plague Claw Catapult misfires and explodes on its first shot. The first Warp Lightning Cannon hits the Iron Guts, killing off 5 of them, including the Army General. The second shot kills off 2 Ogre Bulls and takes out the Thunder Tusk when the hit multiplied to 6 wounds. On the Ogre's turn, the Man-Eaters charge the Doom Wheel, while the Saber Tusk, Iron Guts, and Ogre Bulls move across the field. The Ogres get 9 dice in spell generation and use them to cast Flamestorm with irresistible force. The center slave unit loses 16 slaves, and the backlash finishes off one ogre bull. The lead belchers hit the storm vermin for 5 wounds, and the iron blaster cannon takes out the upper warp lightning cannon. The doom wheel takes a wound from impact hits and causes 3 wounds itself before being crushed by 7 wounds. In turn 2, the Skaven charge the remaining Saber-Tusk with their upper slave unit. The lower slaves, clan rats, and storm vermin move forward while the plague monks reform to face the man-eaters. The Skaven get 7 power dice against 5 dispel dice in the magic phase. They cast Plague on the ogre bulls for 2 wounds, but the spell spreads to the center slaves unit and takes out 36 slaves. The spell then takes another bad bounce and kills off 7 clan rats from the centermost unit. It bounces to the Iron Guts, who take a single wound, and even makes it to the Iron Belchers, and the spell finally fizzles out. With the remaining power dice, Warp Lightning is attempted but dispelled. In the shooting phase, the Warp Fire Thrower burns up some of the swamp. The upper Poison Wind Mortar gets 1 more wound on the Man-Eaters, while the lower 2 get a wound on the Lead Belchers. The remaining Warp Lightning Cannon overloads but fires off of the board. The Poison Wind Globadiers fire into the Saber-Tusk slave melee and kill off a single slave. Finally, the Warlock Engineer caps off his Doom Rocket, which grazes the Ogre Bulls, finishing off one and adding a wound to another. The Ogre Man-Eaters fail their panic check and run. In the combat, the slaves lose 2 models, but due to the charge and rank bonus, they win the combat and chase the Saber-Tusk down, suffering another casualty while running through the swamp. The Ogre Bulls charge the Clan Rat unit containing the BSB, which promptly flees toward the board edge. The Bulls redirect into the Globadiers, who also flee, moving through the Plague Monks, but everyone passes their panic tests. The Mournfang Cavalry successfully charge the Storm Vermin, and the Iron Guts move up on the weapon teams. For magic, the Flame Belly attempts Flamestorm again, but the spell fails. In the shooting phase, the Iron Belchers take out the lower Poison Wind Mortar weapon team, while the Iron Blaster Cannon shoots for the Clan Rat unit with the Grey Seer General, but the shot falls short. For close combat, the Mournfang Cavalry do 5 impact hits on the Storm Vermin to start the melee. The Storm Vermin do 3 wounds, killing off 1 model, while the Mournfang take down 4 more Storm Vermin in close combat. The Storm Vermin lose the combat, but they pass their panic check, no thanks to the fleeing Battle Standard Bearer. For the Skaven turn, the BSB unit rallies and turns back toward the line, but this takes place entirely off-screen. The lower slaves make a swift reform to return to horde formation and take a small step to the right. The Plague Monks also make a swift reform and move toward the center of the field. The upper slave unit turns to face the Iron Blaster. The Skaven roll a 3 for Winds of Fate, but they are able to get Death Frenzy off on the Storm Vermin unit. For shooting, the Warp Lightning Cannon shoots for the line of Ogre Bulls, but the shot dissipates for no hits, and the Warp Fire Thrower causes a wound on the Ogre Bulls, who end up failing their leadership twice and fleeing. For close combat, the Storm Vermin hit the Mournfang Cavalry for a single wound, even with Death Frenzy. The retaliation takes out 8 Storm Vermin. They remain steadfast, but fail their leadership and run off the board. The Storm Vermin flee through the Warp Lightning Cannon, which fails its panic check and is destroyed. The Mournfang Cavalry declare a charge on the Clan Rat unit containing the BSB, which is off of the screen at this time. They flee, hoping for a short distance roll, which ends up being a 10, vaulting them off of the board. The Iron Guts charge the Warp Fire Thrower, which elects to stand and shoot. 2 of the Iron Guts die in the flames, but the survivor passes his panic check and makes the charge. The Man-Eaters charge the Poison Wind Globadiers through a normal forest, and the Ogre Bulls continue to flee. The Iron Blaster lines up for a shot through the upper slave unit. The Iron Belchers fire into the lower slave unit and pick off a single slave, while the Iron Blaster hits the upper slave unit with Grape Shot for 2 kills. In the upper melee, the Ogres use the Breath weapon from the battle standard, which takes out 1 Globadier and makes them always strike last. The ensuing melee from the Ogres kills off the remaining Globadiers. The Plague Monks pass their panic check. In the lower combat, the Warp Fire Thrower team deals a single wound to the remaining Iron Gut, but gets cut down in retaliation, and the Iron Gut overruns into the Clan Rats. Further resolution wasn't to be had as the game time was too close to ending to allow for an additional turn. With the loss of all the Skaven artillery and the survival of both of the Ogre core units, the Ogre Kingdoms secured a marked victory despite the largest melee being fought off of screen. Thanks for watching this battle report. Be sure to check back for more videos each week. Do us a favor and subscribe, and as always, send us a message if you have any tactics or matchups that you'd like to see. Till next time from the Vidhammer crew, keep fighting.